Hello student, this is the revision part of your chapter number 1. The maps by Arab geographer Al-Idrisis 1154 and French cartographer 1720 give a large sketch of the Indian subcontinent. Indian subcontinent gi map si kana na yamge haba matamda 1154 da Arab geographer Al-Idrisi na ama yame. And later France cartographer habadi kanano haba matamda Guillaume de Lisle mahangna 1720 da amaga yame. Aduna Indian subcontinent gi map se kana na yamge haba matamda mamang da pankriba miyoi ani sinani ko yamise. And science of cartography, however, was different in two times period. Cartography ki science se time periods different oibagi matungina the science of cartography also different. That is why the map drawn by Al-Idrisi and Guillaume de Lisle were different. Next, new and old terminologies. Historical records exist in a variety of languages. Historical records mayam singse language makal kaya amada fangeb. The term Hindustan was coined by Minhas-e-Siras. Minhas-e-Siras abdi kanano haba matamda a chronicler who wrote in Persian. Persian chronicler ni Minhas-e-Siras hariba miyoi se mahangna Hindustan haibase karamba jagabu mahangna Hindustan hairamge haba matamda the areas around Punjab, Haryana, and the land between the Ganga and the Yamuna. Next, Babur also used Hindustan to describe the flora and fauna and the culture of the inhabitants of the subcontinent. Unlike Minhas-e-Siras, Babur described Hindustan as the flora, fauna, and the culture of the inhabitants of the subcontinent. And a 14th century poet Amir Khusrau also used the word Hind. And next, and come to the term foreigner. In medieval period, the term foreigner was any stranger who was not a part of that society or culture. Foreigner haibasi hojiki matamdadi Indian nattaba kangbubo foreigner haidana hainai, but in medieval period tadi the term foreigner haibasi karama miyoibu kauge haiba matamda particular society natraga culture dugi wangbadagi lakpa miyoi jingdubo foreigner haidana hainarami. In Hindi, the term Pardesi was used to describe a foreigner. Hindi da foreigner haibase Pardesi haidan hainai aduga Persian dana ajnabi. The next, historian and their sources. The information about the medieval period is derived from different sources such as coins, inscriptions, architectures, and textual records. Medieval period ki mahaki information mayam jingse karamba sources mayam dagi historian jingne loge haba matamda coins, inscription, architecture, and textual records dagi lowe. Karina lawri say information about the medieval period. Since paper became cheaper, people start writing holy texts, chronicles of rulers, letters and teachings of saints, petitions and judicial records, and for registers of account and taxes. Paper sina hongakpagi matungina hongbada natana fangbagi chang hengalakpagi matungina mi jingsina aikoigi paper da ibagi chang se yamna wangkhaleba kari na makhoina ireise haba matamda holy texts, chronicles of rulers, letters and teachings of saints, petitions and judicial records, and for registers of account and taxes. Next point, manuscripts were collected by wealthy people, rulers, monasteries, and temples. Manuscript habasi kana na collect toge haba matamda wealthy people pisa paiba miyoi adagidi rulers, monasteries, and temples. Manuscripts were placed in libraries and archives. Manuscript mayam jingse libraries amadi archives ta thammeba. The next point, as there was no printing press, scribes copied manuscript by hand and they also introduced small changes Printing press ꯂꯩꯔꯝꯗꯕꯅ manuscript ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯡꯁꯦ scribesꯤꯡꯁꯤꯅ ꯃꯈꯨꯠꯅ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯏꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯈꯨꯠꯅ ꯏꯔꯛꯄꯅꯤꯅ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯅ manuscript ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯡꯁꯦ ꯑꯃꯗꯒꯤ ꯑꯃꯗ copy ꯁꯨꯝ ꯇꯧꯔꯛꯄꯁꯤꯗꯩꯁꯤꯗ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯅꯧꯕ ꯈꯔ ꯑꯍꯣꯡꯕ ꯈꯔ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯁꯨꯝ ꯍꯥꯞꯆꯜꯂꯒ ꯏꯔꯦꯕ scribesꯤꯡꯁꯤꯅ manuscript copy ꯇꯧꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ. The next topic, new social and political group. In this period, new technologies made their appearance like the Persian wheel in irrigation, the spinning wheel in weaving, and firearms in combat. ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕ period ꯁꯤꯗꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ technologies ꯑꯅꯧꯕ ꯀꯔꯤ Persian wheel in irrigation ꯗ Persian wheel ꯑꯗꯨꯒ weaving ꯗꯅ spinning wheel and combat ꯗꯅ firearms ꯁꯤꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯑꯅꯧꯕ technologies ꯀꯌꯥ ꯑꯃ ꯊꯣꯛꯂꯛꯑꯦꯕ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯀꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕ period ꯁꯤꯗꯗꯤ. ꯀꯔꯝꯕ period ꯅꯣ? Medieval period ꯁꯤꯗꯅꯤꯀꯣ. The next point, new foods and beverages like potatoes, corn, chilies, teas, and coffee were also arrived in this subcontinent. ꯑꯅꯧꯕ technologies ꯈꯛꯇꯪ ꯅꯠꯇꯅ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ foods and beverages such as potatoes, corn, chilies, teas, and coffees ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯁꯨ Indian subcontinent ꯁꯤꯗ ꯂꯥꯛꯄ ꯍꯧꯔꯦꯕ. All these innovations came along with people who brought new ideas with them, and this period was period of economic, social, and cultural changes. Anouba innovations, ngasaygi technologies, food, mayam ama lakpasida natana miyoi kaya amaga loinaraganeba hojiki innovations mayam ama laise. Aduna hojiki miyoi mayamjingsina lakpa matamda anouba idea kaya ama makoina puraga lae. Aduna makoina anouba idea kaya ama koigi subcontinent sida introduce tawrakpanina masigi period sibu economic, social, and cultural changes haidana hairameba. It was a period of great mobility as people travel long distance in search of opportunity. Khudong chaba thinanaba honarakpada miyoi jingsina jaga kaya makoina travel tawraga chatnarakpagi period neba. Aduna masigi period sibu great mobility haidana su hainaramiko. One such group of people was Rajput. Other groups of warriors were Marathas, Sikh, Jats, Ahom, and Kayasthas. Ngasaygi opportunity thiba lam sangna travel tawraga khudong chaba thiba adugumba miyoi jingdo madugi manungda Rajput haibasisu amaneba. Aduga Rajput nataba atopa kangbu group of warriors kharasu lay kanano Maratha, Sikh, Jats, Ahom, and Kayasthas. Makhoi jingsina lam sangna travel tawraga opportunity thiba haureeba hojiki hairiba period sidadi. Throughout the period, there was a gradual clearing of forests and extension of agriculture. Challenges in their habitat forced many forest dwellers to migrate. Hojiki hairiba period sidadi forest mayam ama kokthoaga agricultural expansion gi system se chatnaba haureeba. And challenges in their habitat forced many forest dwellers to migrate. Ngasaygi forest dweller oina lairamba mayamjingdo forest mayamjing loinamak paktaknana kokthokpa haurabanina makhoigi habitat da challenges laeba. Then hojiki hairiba forest dweller mayamjingdubu habitat change lakpanina makhoi migration tawbagi chang yang wangalaeba. As society became more differentiated, people were grouped into jatis or subcastes and ranked on the basis of their backgrounds and their occupations. Forest dweller mayamjingsina migrate tawba haurakre aduga ngasaygi migrate tawdaba kangbu mayamjingduna peasants oina adum land mayam ama makhoina till tawraga leiba haurabaniko. Aduga hojiki peasants mayamjingduna leiriba aduguma makhoigi society dudaiduda atopa landlords mayamjingsigi interference haurabaneba. Madugi interference haurakpadagidi society became more differentiated. Society si aduki matik change oire yamna complex oiba society ama oireeba. Ngasaygi adugumba market forces, landlords, adudagidi paisa paiba mayamjingsina peasants mayamjingsida khut thingjalakpa haugalakpadagidi. Aduna makhoigi society mayamjingse became more differentiated and complex ꯑꯣꯏꯁꯜꯂꯛꯑꯕꯅꯤꯅ ꯃꯤꯑꯣꯏꯁꯤꯡꯁꯦ they were grouped into jatis or subcasts ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯅ ꯈꯥꯏꯗꯣꯔꯛꯄ ꯍꯧꯔꯛꯑꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯃꯗꯨꯒꯤ jatis ꯅꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯒ subcasts ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯡꯗꯨꯕꯨ rank ꯃꯊꯪ ꯃꯅꯥꯎ ꯅꯥꯏꯅ ꯈꯥꯏꯗꯣꯔꯛꯄ ꯍꯧꯔꯛꯑꯦꯕ ꯀꯔꯤꯗ ꯕꯦꯁ ꯇꯧꯔꯒ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ backgrounds ꯑꯃꯗꯤ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ occupation ꯗ ꯕꯦꯁ ꯇꯧꯔꯒ jatis ꯅꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯒ subcasts ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯅ rank ꯅꯥꯏꯅ ꯈꯥꯏꯗꯣꯔꯛꯄ ꯍꯧꯔꯛꯈ꯭ꯔꯦꯕ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ period ꯁꯤꯗꯒꯤꯗꯤ and those ranks were not fixed permanently and varied according to the power, influence and resources controlled by the members of the jatis. ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯐꯤꯛꯁ ꯇꯧꯈ꯭ꯔꯤꯕ ꯔꯦꯡꯛꯇꯣ ꯄꯔꯃꯥꯅꯦꯟ ꯑꯣꯏꯗꯦꯕ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯔꯦꯡꯛ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯡꯁꯦ ꯖꯒꯥ ꯑꯃꯒ ꯑꯃꯒ ꯚꯦꯔꯥꯏꯠ ꯑꯣꯏ ꯁꯦꯝ ꯑꯣꯏꯗꯦꯕ ꯀꯔꯤꯗ ꯚꯦꯔꯥꯏꯠ ꯑꯣꯏꯒꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ according to the power, influence and resources controlled by the members of the jati ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯖꯥꯇꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯦꯝꯕꯔ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯡꯗꯨꯅ ꯀꯟꯇ꯭ꯔꯣꯜ ꯇꯧꯔꯤꯕ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯄꯥꯋꯔ influence ꯑꯃꯗꯤ resourcesꯇꯣ ꯃꯗꯨꯗꯩꯗꯨꯗ ꯕꯦꯁ ꯇꯧꯔꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯚꯦꯔꯥꯏꯠ ꯑꯣꯏ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯔꯦꯡꯛꯁꯤꯡꯗꯣ permanently fixed ꯑꯣꯏꯕ ꯔꯦꯡꯛꯇꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯗꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ. Then next, regions and empires. Large states like those of the Cholas, the Tughlaq or the Mughals encompasses many regions. ꯑꯆꯧ-ꯑꯆꯧꯕ state ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ Cholas, Tughlaq ꯑꯃꯗꯤ Mughals ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤꯅ ꯖꯒꯥ ꯀꯌꯥ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯀꯟꯇ꯭ꯔꯣꯜ ꯇꯧꯔꯒ ꯊꯝꯃꯦꯕ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯃꯃꯥꯡꯗ ꯀꯔꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯈꯤꯒꯦ ꯄꯥꯟ ꯔꯤꯖꯅꯦꯜ ꯑꯦꯝꯄꯥꯌꯔ ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯈꯤꯀꯣ. A Sanskrit Prasasti that praises Delhi Sultan Balban tells us that he was the ruler of a vast empire that stretched from Bengal in the east to Ghazni in Afghanistan in the west and included all of South India. Sanskritki Prasasti amada Delhi Sultan Balban hariba miyoise mahakse vast empire ama rule taurami haidana hairamiko mahangna control tauramise Bengal in the east to Ghazni in Afghanistan in the west and included all of South India. Hojiki Sanskrit Prasasti duda Delhi Sultan Balban hariba miyoise mahangna control tauramiba jaga mayamjingdo yamna chawi haidana mahangna mention tauramiko. There were considerable conflicts between various states. Asagi lairiba adukumba states mayamjingse masigi marakta conflict yam toina thoeba. When the Mughal Empire declined in the 18th century, it led to the re-emergence of regional states. 18th century da Mughal Empire sina muthagraba matungda regional state kaya ama amuk safongakpa haureeba re-emergence of regional states harise safongakpa haureeba ngasaigi regional states mayam ama karam kanda 18th century da Mughal Empire na decline tawkrakanda. Next, old and new religions. It was during the period that important changes occurred in what we call Hinduism today. Hojiki hariba period se ngasaigi hojik akhona khangnariba Hinduism haidana lairiba religion se masidai sida changes kaya ama lakpa adugumba period neba. Kari changes lakke haba matamda it included the worship of new deities. Anoba deities kaya worship tawba haurakpa adagidi construction of temples by royalty ningthogi macha masu mayamjingsina temple achou saba haugalakpa and the growing importance of brahmanas haibasigi mahaki importance aduki matik mayamna luna launarakpa ko aduna sigumbagi changes mayam ama lakpa adugumba period ne basisi. And knowledge of Sanskrit helped Brahmins to earn respect. Brahmins mayamjingsina Sanskrit ki knowledge laibase masisina neba makoida mayamna respect thamise. A major development of this period was the emergence of the idea of bhakti. Hojiki hariba period sigi major development haragadi emergence of the idea of bhakti. The teachings of the Holy Quran were also brought to India in the 17th century. 17th century da Holy Quran ki teaching se masichu Indian subcontinent sida pusalakpa haureba karam kandano 17th century sida. Islam was patronized by many rulers. Rulers kaya ama Islam gi follower oirakpa mayam ama amuk yaukhaleko sigi matang sidadi. And followers of Islam were divided into two subsects. Islam's follower mayamjingsisu makhal ani thona khaidore kai Shia and Sunni Muslim haidana. The next topic, thinking about time and historical period. The British historian divided the history of India into three periods. British historian mayamna Indian history sibu period ahum thona khaidokpirami kai Hindu, Muslim and British haidana. Adubu this division ignored the development in economic, society or culture and also ignored the rich diversity of the subcontinent. British historian mayamna khaidokpiramiba adugumba Indian gi period se Hindu, Muslim, British haidana. Masigi division sina ignore tawi kai ignore tauge haiba matamda development in economic, society or culture and also ignore the rich diversity of the subcontinent. The last era was called the modern period, which carried a sense of material progress and intellectual development. Ikon konba era sina kari kauge haba matamda modern period haidana kawi ko. Modern period haibasina kari da changes lake haba matamda material progress and intellectual development. Material the progress lakpa amadi intellectual the development lakpa adugumba period neba hojiki ikon konba era modern period haidana hairis. Now look at some important points. Cartographer. The person who makes map are called cartographer. Next, chronicler. One who writes history or pen down the events of the time from the historical point of view. Archive, a place where manuscripts and documents are stored. Next, manuscripts, books and documents written by hands. Next, patron, a person who provides support with money to an artist, a craftsman, and learned man, or a noble, or some other persons of such categories. Patron ibadi, who provides support with money to kana artist da, craftsman da, learned man da, noble da, aduga adugumbagi category da laiba miyoi mayamjing do madudaiduda support piba kariga loinana money ga loinana support piba miyoi mayamjing dubuni patron haidana haris. Next, jati, the subcaste which was defined or identified on the basis of one's profession, status and influence. Jati haibadi akoina mamangna kari haidana haigre makoise subcaste ni ko kari da base ro khaidokpa makoigi occupation amadi makoigi background da yengaga rank naina khaidorakpa kangbu mayamjing dubuni jati haidana hairis. 17th century AD. The teachings of the Holy Quran brought to India. 17th century AD da important oiba adugomba kari incident hokige aba matamda Holy Quran se India da porakhibani ko. Then 1154 da kari hokige map of the Indian subcontinent made by Al-Idrisi. 1154 da kari ningsang baya koina Indian subcontinent ki map kanana yekiba Al-Idrisi na yekiba. Then 1266 to 1287. Sinakari reign of the Delhi Sultan Ghiyasuddin Balban. Delhi Sultan Ghiyasuddin Balbana mahakna panbagi matam niko. Mahakna Indian subcontinent sida panba control toba mahakna ruler oiba adugi matam ni 1266 to 1287. Now last 1356 tana kari tarongge ba matamda Ziauddin Barani wrote his first chronicle. Ziauddin Barani gi ihan hanba chronicle igiba chahiduni 1356 haidana haris. Now let's come to your exercise. Your first question: who was considered a foreigner in the past? Foreigner hairaga kanabu khangnaramge ba akoigi past history da. A foreigner was any stranger who appears in a given village, someone who was not a part of the society or culture. Foreigner hairagadi kanano karamba miyoi jingno haiba matamda particular society natraga culture dudagi nataba madugi wang madagi lakpa miyoi jingdubu foreigner haidana hairameba past history da. Then next question number 2. Question number 2 gidi true or false ni ko. Aduna I question dudi pararoi answer kaktang sida iribase dum pathorake. 2 gi A false, B true, C true, D false. Then next question number 3. Masigi question di pararoi answer kaktang pathorake. A the documents and manuscripts, B the Ziauddin Barani, C the potatoes, corn, chilies, tea and coffee. The next question number 4. List some of the technological changes associated with this period. Hojiki hariba period sida technological changes kadai da lake haibido chawrana hayu haibani ko. Answer the kai changes lakre. The Persian wheel in irrigation, the spinning wheel in weaving, firearms in combat. Next question. What were some of the major religious developments during this period? Hojiki hariba period sida religious development kadai da lake haibidoni ko. Some of the major religious development during this period were the inclusion of new deities in Hinduism. Hinduism da anauba deities kaya ama hapsalakpa, and the emergence of the idea of bhakti emerged tawrakpa, and last point, the construction of temples by royalty kangbu mayamjing sina temple achau construction tawba haugalakpa. Masigumba mayamjing sibo koina major religious development da mention tawba yai ko. Adoka sida nakoina point ama hapsan ge hairiga su yai. Ainadi point do sida haptre, but you can add one point here, and the point is karamba point no sida hapsan ba yari se aba matamda India da Indian subcontinent Holy Quran pusalakibado madugi point dusu sida hapak yai. That means Islam religion na Indian subcontinent da lakibado madusu major religious development sida hapa yai. Adubu aina iriba answer sida di haptre, but you can add that point here also. Then next question. In what ways has the meaning of the term Hindustan changed over the centuries? Hindustan ki meaning se kadai digi kadai fauba changes lake habaduni ko. Sidadi akoina mamangda discuss tawgiba minha series na kari hairamge haiba, adagidi babur na kari hairami, adagidi Amir Khusrau na kari hairami haibana chingba mayamdo loinamak panbadum ya. Look here, the term Hindustan was used in the 13th century by Minhas Isirus, a chronicler who wrote in Persian. He meant the areas of Punjab, Haryana and the land between the Ganga and Yamuna. He used the term in a political sense for land that were a part of the dominions of the Delhi Sultan. Persian chronicler Oriba Minhas Isirus na 13th century da Hindustan jibu kari hairamge haiba matamda Delhi Sultan mayam na control tawraga lairiba jaga mayamjing kai the areas of Punjab, Haryana and the land between the Ganga and Yamuna madugi jaga mayam dubu Hindustan aidana hairami ko. Adubu Minhas Isirus ki contrast da 16th century da Babur na Hindustan se kari haidana mention amuk tarongge haiba matamda the geography, the fauna and the culture of the inhabitants of the subcontinent. And after that, in 14th century, Amir Khusrau also used the word Hind. 14th century poet Oriba Amir Khusrau nusu Hind hariba word se mahak na use tawramiko. Kanaga manarap na use taramge aba matamda Babur ga manarap na Amir Khusrau nusu use tawrami hujiki Hind hariba word se. But the term Hindustan used by the different people did not carry political and national meanings which we mean today. Hauji akoina Hindustan hairaga khangnariba masigi mean se masagi mamang the different people mayam jingsina use torambadudi political and national meaning. Hauji no akoina Hindustan hairaga political and national meaning oina mean tawriba se sigi meaning sidi Hindustan haibase mamang da past people mayamjingdadi mean tawramdeba noi akhoina hojik mean tawriba Hindustan gi meaning sidi. Then come to the next question. How were the affairs of jatis regulated? Jatis mayamjingse kamdawna control tawramge haibani ko. Jatis were regulated by an assembly of elders, which is also known as jati panchayat in some areas. Jatis mayamjingse jati panchayat haidana akoigi assembly of elders ko makoijingduna control tawrami ko. And jatis frame their own rules and regulations to manage the conduct of their members. Jatis mayamjingsina makoi masa masagi oijaba rules and regulations mayam ama semjai ko kari taunaba makoigi members mayamjingdubu control taunanaba. And jatis also required to follow the rules of their villages governed by chieftain. Jatis mayamjingse makoi masa masagi rules and regulations mayam ama laijaragasu they have to follow the rules of their villages governed by chieftain. The next question. What does the term pan-regional empire mean? Pan-regional empire haibasi karino haibani akoina mamangdasu haikre. Pan-regional empire haibadi ngasaigi empire kangbuni makoijingtuna kaidauba diverse region achauba region kayama control tawraga makoina empire amamam linkhatlaga leiba adugumba akoigi dynasties mayam samna harabada Cholas, Khaljis, Tughluq and Mughals makoi mayam jingdubu pan regional empire haidana hai. Ayamuka halake pan regional empire haibadi diverse region lam achauba kaya ama control tawraga empire amamam linkhatlaga leiriba akoigi samna harabada dynasties of Cholas, Khaljis, Tughluq and Mughals makoi jingdubu pan regional empire haidana hai. Yarani ko. The next question. What are the difficulties historian faces in using manuscript? Manuscript use tawba matamda historian mayamna kari problem face tawge hai. There was no printing press in those days, so scribe copies manuscript by hand, which were difficult to read and understand. Printing press lairamdabana scribe mayamjingsina manuscript se makoi makhunna oina iyeba aduna paba amadi understand tawbada problem aduki matik thoameba. And during copying, scribes also introduced small changes in a word or sentence which grew over centuries of copying. Silakpa matamda khutna sinbanina scribe mayamjingsina anauba akoigi word natraga sentence kaya amasu makoina amuk semdoeba introduce tawsaleba scribe mayamjingsina. And original manuscript of the author rarely found today, so they are totally dependent upon the copies made by later scribes. Original oiba manuscript akoigi real author mayamjingna iramba adugumba original oiba manuscript ti hojiki matamda phangba ware. Maramdi karigino haiba matamda scribe mayamjingsina copy tawthorakriba adugumba manuscript mayamjingdo adu oina phangeba hojiki matamdadi. Historians have to read different manuscript versions of the same text to guess what the author had originally written. Aduna historian mayamjingsina different manuscript makal maka kayagi manuscript se makoi paba mathau taeba karigidamakta ngasaigi author original author mayamjingduna iramiba potse makoi khangnanabagidamagta they have to read different version of manuscript. Now come to the next question. That means your last textual question. How do historians divide the past into periods? Do they face any problem in doing so? Historian mayamjingsina past se period 9 na khaidorakpasi makoi kamdauna khaidoke masi khaidokpa matamda makoida problem face tawbra haibaduni ko. Historians divide the past into periods on the basis of economic and social factors in order to characterize the major elements of different moments of the past. Historian mayamjingsina past mayamjingse makoina period oina khaidokpase karida base tawraga khaidoke haiba matamda economic amadi social factors masidaisida base tawragani makoina mainly past mayamsingse period oina khaidorei historian mayamsingsina aduga sumaina akoigi past mayamsingse makoina period oina khaidorappa matamsida makoina kari problem thengnage haba matamda the historian faced a lot of problem because of time itself reflects the changes in social and economic and organization in the persistence and transformation of ideas and belief saigi makoina past mayamsingsibu period oina khaidorappa matamsidaisida karida base taraga khaidoeba based on economic and social factors sidaisida base taraga ni makoina past mayamsingse period oina khaidorakkadoise adubu masi khaidorakko matamsidaisida makoina ihar hana thingnariba problem si kaino haiba matamda matamgi ahongba ko time haibase sum change tawrakadoini aduna time haibase change tawringai ngasai social and economic and organization se sidasu adum change taweba karigidamakta no haiba matamda matam hongakpagi matungina ngasai miyuiba mayamjingsigi ideas and beliefs se masisu sum hongakpasina hojiki hariba social economic and organization se masidaisida periods naina khaidorakpase masisu aduki matik problematic oye yamna waeba karigidamakta no matam hongakpagi matungina ideas and beliefs isu transform tarakpanina and the entire period as one historical unit is not without its problem aduna saigi entire period sibu historical unit ama oina makoina describe tawbase masisu problem thokdaba natte haiba and modernity also carries a sense of material progress and intellectual advancement modernity haibasina karida changes lakpano mahaksina material progress and intellectual the advancement lakpa adugumba irani modernity sina then the study of time is made somewhat easier by dividing the past into large segment masaigi pasibu achauchauba large segment oina period achauchauba period yam chawna khaidoga thamgibase pasina masisina amuk masaigi akoina study of time matam haukraba matam mayamjingse masi amuk discuss tawbada khitang laihanbagi mami amadi amuk oyeba karina masaigi dividing the past into large segment achauchauba period naina akoina past ki lairiba adugumba past time haukraba matam mayamjingse masibu achauchauba segment achauchauba period naina khaidoga thambase masisina matam discuss tawbada khitang easier somewhat easier kitang laihanba pot amadi oy haidana haiba now come to some extra question and answer number 1 is what is archaeology archaeology is the study of historical or other remain of the past archaeology abadi kaino haukraba mayamjing pasta lairamiba koigi historical natraga atopa past ki remaining mayamjingi maramda nainaba adubu kai kauge haba matamda archaeology then what is cartographer abdi kanano maybe iba miyoi dubu cartographer kawi ko what do you mean by archive abdi kaino archive abdi manuscript amadi document thamnaba jaga adubu archive kawi ko then next what is a monument monument abdi kaino is a type of structure that was explicitly created to commemorate a person or event monument abdi kanagumba miyoi natraga karigumba event amabu ningsingnabagidamakta semaga thamba adugumba structure dubuniko when did the Mughal emperor decline obviously 18th century what are the sources used by historian to write history inabu honabada historian mayamjingna kari sources used to gaba matamda coins inscription architecture and textual records who were jatis were the subcaste people yamna laire ko side next give any two contributions of medieval period of Indian history gi medieval period sigi akogi contribution se kaino aba matamda most of the language that we speak today were developed in medieval period of India hujik modern India da ngangnariba language anambana medieval period ta develop tawramba ngaktaneba and most of the current religious beliefs were also developed in this period. Languages khaktak natana religious mayam amasu hojik akhoi chatnaramiba dharma mayamjingse masisu anambana medieval period ta develop taramba ngatane. Who were the patrons? Patrons were a group of influential, wealthy classes people who provided protection and livelihood to the brahmanas, artists, and poets. Mamangduso ina haikre patron haibadi ngasai brahmanas, artists, and poets makhoi support pibiba. Kari the support mentally as well as money. Support pibiba adugumba miyoi kanglup tubu kadamba miyoi kanglup no paisa paiba. Royalty, wealthy class peoples makhoi patron haidana haisi. I repeat, patron haibadi kanano haiba matamda wealthy class people paisa paiba senjau paiba mayam koigi brahmanas, artists, and poets makhoida support pibiba kangbujingdubu patrons haidana kawi ko. How Brahmanas earn lot of respect in this society. Society sida Brahmans mayamjingsina respect se kamdauna tangeba. Sididum obviously knowledge of Sanskrit text. Sanskrit ki text ki knowledge laibase masi sinanebu Brahman mayamjingsina society sida they earn lot of respect. So student, here are some of your home assignment. What difference do you notice in the map drawn by Al-Idrisi? Al-Idrisi na yeamba map sida nakoi kari khenaba uba fange habaduni ko. Then question number 2, what do you mean by Jati Panchayat? Jati Panchayat habasi kari no habani. Then next, who were scribe? Scribe habasi na kanano habani. Loinamak araiba question ngaktani ko. Try yourself. So student, with this we have completed your revision. Your remaining chapter will explain in upcoming videos.